This is the Algebra 1, Unit 3, Lesson 3 practice video for Algebra 1 Summer School. For this practice video, I'm going to do graph number 4 and graph number 5. If you have questions other than number 4 and number 5, you need to come in and see the teacher for office hours. All right, this is a tough part of the unit. Let's make sure that we really understand it before we take the test. All right, graph number 4. First of all, we want to find the x-intercept. All right, well, when I look at the x-intercepts here, that's where I cross the x-axis. Now, not quite perfect in terms of exact spots to cross the x-axis, so you can approximate. So I'm going to say this first dot was probably at about 0.250, and the second one looked about to be 3.75. If you want to, you could round that to 0 and 4. That's fine. All right, the y-intercept is where we cross the y-axis. That appears to be this point right here, which is at 0, 1. Next, I want to talk about the maximum. I want to know, does my graph have a very highest point? Well, when I look at my graph, it appears to have arrows at the top, which means that the graph goes up forever, which means that there is no maximum point. However, there is a very lowest point. There is a minimum. That minimum is this blue dot right here and looks to be at 2, -3. Now, domain, the tricky one. Domain is going from left to right. So the first blank is what's on the left. The second blank is farthest to the right. When I look where I'm going to the left, there's an arrow. And we talked a lot in our notes about how the arrow going to the left means my graph has a domain going from -infinity. Now when I look all the way to the right of my graph, there's another arrow, which means my graph goes to the right to +infinity. Now when I look at the range, instead of going left to right, my graph goes bottom to top. So when I look at the very bottom of this graph, there does appear to be a very lowest point. That very lowest point has a y value of -3. That's the lowest I go. And then my graph appears to go up and up and up because of these arrows forever to infinity. Now, does this graph appear to have an axis of symmetry? Is there a line that I can draw right through the middle of my graph that it would look even on either side? The answer is yes. I drew it in for the grid for you. Now I want to know, where's my graph increasing, going up from left to right? Well, let's see. To go up from left to right, it kind of looks like I start at the bottom here. I go up here on that side. So I start going up at this very low point. That x value is at 2, and I'm going up in this highlighted region. There's an arrow on the end, forever to infinity. Same idea with interval of decrease. It looks like I'm going down on this left-hand portion here. On the left of that portion is an arrow, so I'm decreasing from -infinity all the way until I get to the x value of 2. Now let's do some function notation. I'm trying to find g of 4. 4 is in the parentheses, so it's an x value. So I go to where x equals 1, 2, 3, 4, and I go up to the graph. That 4 for the x appears to give me an output of 1. So g of 4 equals 1. I write that as an ordered pair as 4, 1. Now the last question says, how many times does the function g of x equal 1? Well, 1 is a y value. So I go to where y equals 1 right here, and it appears to cross once and twice, so 2 times. So that's graph number 4. That's similar to what we did in our notes. Now let's look at graph number 5, which is the same, but a little bit different. There's going to be no arrows on number 5. First of all, let's start with x-intercepts. Now, it might be a little hard to see the axis here, so I'm going to color them in on the grid. You can do the same for yourself. So that horizontal is my x-axis, and the other one's my y. So I'm looking here for x-intercepts, where I cross that axis. Well, these 3 dots appear to be where I cross the x-axis. Going all the way way to the left is 1, 2, 3 at -4. This next x-intercept appears to be at -2, 0. And the last one here is at +2, 0. Ran out of room. Now I have my y-intercept where I cross the y-axis. Okay. That looks to be right on this line at 1, 2, 3, -4. So 0, -4 is my y-intercept. Now I'm looking for a maximum. This time, there are no arrows on the end of my graph. So the very highest point my graph has is right up here. That ordered pair appears to be at 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3, 5. That's the ordered pair of the maximum. That's the highest point your graph has. For the minimum, the very lowest point appears to be down here. That lowest point is at 0, -4. So this time I had both a minimum and a maximum. Now here, domain is also a little bit different. I'm just going to erase the words that I've drawn. Domain we've been talking about goes from left to right. So I'm going to go to the very farthest point that the graph on my left has, which is right here. That's as far to the left as my graph goes. The x value that happens at is at -1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my graph starts at -5, and it goes, and it goes, and it goes, and it goes until here, which has an x value. I go right until this point. That x value there is at 3. So my domain is from -5 to 3. That's the x values that are under the graph. Now when I talk about range, range is the y values here. So I start at the very lowest point on my graph, which actually is down here. That's the lowest point, which is at -1, 2, 3, -4. That's the bottom. Now my graph then goes up, 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 until it gets to this top right here, which is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the range goes from -4 to +5. That's the y values that are underneath the graph. Now, does this graph appear to have an axis of symmetry? No, it does not. There doesn't seem to be a place in the graph where it looks equal on both sides. Let's talk about intervals of increase and decrease here. Increase is going up from left to right. Now, it appears that there's an interval there and also another interval right here. There's two places where my graph is going up. So I need to find the x values on the ends of those intervals. This first dot here has an x value of 1, 2, 3, 4, -5. That's where I start going up. And I increase until I get to the x value of -3. So that's one interval, but I actually have a second one. So I'm going to draw the blanks again and write a second interval here. It also appears my graph is increasing here, starting at x equals 0 and going up, up, up until x equals 3. Now, it does only seem to have one interval where it's going down. This portion right here, which is between these two green dots. The first green dot starts the interval at -3, and we're going down until x equals 0. Right, so we go up, then down, then up. All right, finally, function notation. H of 2. All right, so I'm going to go to x equals 2. And when I get there, I don't have to go up or down. It appears that the output for h of 2 is just 0. I don't go up or down. It's 2, 0. So that's the ordered pair of that point. But then it asks, how many times does h of x equal 0? Well, that 0 is a y. So when I actually draw the line, y equals 0, we already knew about one of them. It also crosses 2 more times. So 3 times you get an output value of 0 on this graph. All right, this stuff is kind of tricky, so if you have questions and you're not getting the right answers that are on the key that's posted on Canvas, you need to come into office hours and check with your instructor for a little bit of help.